Welcome back to the deep dive. You sent us some information about, oh gosh, what was her name? Yolanda Saldívar,
Right.
the woman who was convicted of killing Selena Quintanilla-Pérez.
Yeah, back in 1995.
Yeah, 1995.
Yeah.
And she was recently denied parole. And what really struck me looking at this is that this is so much bigger than just like a news update.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
This is really a story that kind of speaks to a much bigger moment in music history and its lasting cultural impact. So that's what made me really want to kind of dive into this a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point because when we think about this case, when we think about this parole decision, we're really talking about kind of the echoes of a really significant loss.
Right.
Selena was such an amazing figure in, music history, and as that Associated Press article from March 27th, 2025 details, she was a true pioneer, one of the first Mexican-American artists to really break through to mainstream success. And you think about the doors she opened for women in Latin music, and she was only 23 years old with this incredible trajectory towards English language pop superstardom.
Yeah, it's really incredible to think about. I mean, she was known to so many as simply Selena. Just a name that became really synonymous with vibrant music and a radiant personality.
Absolutely.
So for today's deep dive, our central question is really kind of based on what you sent. And, we're really trying to tease out, what are the key takeaways that we can get from this parole denial? And what do those takeaways really tell us about the enduring power of Selena's life and the tragedy of her death? So let's kind of start with that, the specifics of the parole board's decision.
Okay, so the AP report confirms that the Texas Board of Pardon and Paroles has denied Yolanda Saldívar parole.
Okay.
And this is her first opportunity for parole since the conviction in 1995.
Wow.
At 64 years old, she will remain incarcerated.
And the board, they gave some pretty definitive reasons, it seems like.
They concluded that Saldívar continues to pose a threat to public safety. And they also emphasized the nature of the crime, stating that it demonstrated a conscious disregard for the lives, safety, or property of others.
Yeah.
And that's a very direct assessment, and I think it really highlights the severity with which they view her actions even after all this time.
Yeah, and so to add a little bit more context here, the article mentions that Saldívar will be eligible for parole review again in 2030.
Okay.
So this was a significant decision, but, it's not like the legal process is totally concluded.
Right.
And the report also included a statement from Selena's family and her husband, Chris Perez. I thought that was really pretty powerful.
It was a very moving statement. They expressed gratitude to the board for this decision. And while they acknowledged that nothing can undo the past, they stated that this decision reaffirms that justice continues to stand for the beautiful life that was taken from us and from millions of fans around the world far too soon. So I think it really underscores, the ongoing pain and the importance of justice, both for them and for so many people that loved Selena.
Yeah, it's a very real, reminder that even though years have passed, the impact of a loss that significant, it remains very real for a lot of people. So for those who might not be as familiar with the details or just want a little refresher, let's go back and revisit what happened, the crime itself, which took place March 31st, 1995 in Corpus Christi, Texas.
So Selena was tragically shot in the back with a .38 caliber revolver at a Days Inn motel, and the details that emerged were just heartbreaking. Even in such a critical moment, Selena showed incredible resilience.
Yeah.
Despite her injury, she managed to run to the motel lobby and identify Yolanda in room 158 as her attacker before she collapsed.
Wow.
Sadly, she passed away at a hospital a short time later.
And there was that standoff with police, wasn't there?
Right.
And the article mentions that Saldívar had that 9-hour interaction with law enforcement. What'd she say at that time?
Well, according to the report, Saldívar repeatedly told the officers, "I didn't mean to do it. I didn't mean to kill anybody." And she also claimed that she had purchased the gun with the intention of taking her own life. And that claim later became a central element of her defense during the trial.
I mean, it's just incredible to think about that. That immediate aftermath, juxtaposed against this, this vibrant life that was lost so suddenly. And the public reaction to Selena's death was just huge, wasn't it?
It was immense. Over 50,000 people reportedly viewed her body.
Wow.
And it speaks to the incredibly deep connection people felt with her. It wasn't just about her music. It was about what she represented.
Right.
A young, successful Mexican-American woman who embraced her heritage.
Right.
And was on the verge of, even greater things.
Right. And then, of course, came the trial. And as the article notes, it had to be moved to Houston because of the overwhelming media attention. In Corpus Christi, so what were some of the key arguments that were made during the trial, particularly? By Saldívar's defense team?
Well, as the AP report indicates, Saldívar testified that the gun had discharged accidentally during a suicide attempt. The prosecution argued that the evidence pointed to a deliberate act of murder.
Right.
Ultimately, the jury rejected Saldívar's account. And on October 23, 1995, she was found guilty of first-degree murder and received a sentence of life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 30 years.
And that's the eligibility that's just been denied.
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit now about the relationship between Selena and Yolanda Saldívar.
Okay.
I mean, this wasn't just some random encounter.
No.
They had a significant history, both professionally and personally.
Right.
Which makes this whole betrayal even more profound.
Exactly. Saldívar wasn't an outsider. She was deeply entrenched in Selena's professional world.
Right.
She was the founder of Selena's fan club, which grew to be incredibly large and dedicated. And she also managed Selena's growing chain of clothing boutiques, Selena, etc.
Yeah.
So these were positions of considerable trust and responsibility.
Absolutely. And the article touches on the motive a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, what was the reason for that traumatic falling out that kind of preceded everything? And it really seemed to revolve around finances, didn't it?
It did. According to the report, Saldívar was terminated from her positions. In early March of 1995, after discrepancies in financial records were discovered, whether related to the fan club or the boutiques. While the specifics can vary across different reports, the underlying issues seem to be financial mismanagement. And this termination appears to have been the catalyst for the events that followed.
It really shows you how deeply personal betrayals can sometimes have these truly devastating consequences.
Yeah.
But, you know, let's shift gears a little bit now and talk about Selena's enduring legacy.
Okay.
Because even 30 years after her death, her influence is just undeniable.
Absolutely.
The article refers to her as the Queen of Tejano.
Rightfully so.
And, you know, she achieved huge stardom during that Tejano music boom of the early 90s.
Yeah.
And even won a Grammy Award, which is, you know, a significant recognition of her talent and what she brought to that genre. And as the article reminds us, you know, she had so many iconic songs.
She did.
You know, Bidi Bidi Bom Bom, Como la Flor, Amor Prohibido, No Me Queda Más Tú Solo Tú. I mean, those songs, they remain incredibly popular to this day.
They do, and they're just instantly recognizable.
Absolutely. I mean, you hear those songs and you know exactly who it is. And,
yeah.
You know, I think that those songs really are, you know, part of the fabric of, you know, so many people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
And her impact went way beyond just the Tejano music scene.
It did.
The article says that she really opened the floodgates for this new wave of Latin artists who went on to achieve mainstream success.
It's a really powerful statement.
It is.
You know, she had this unique ability to bridge cultural divides. You know, she primarily sang in Spanish, but was also fluent in English. And this resonated with such a, you know, cross-cultural audience. And she represented this new generation of Latin talent that was comfortable navigating both languages and appealing to a much broader listenership. And I think you can really think about all the artists who followed in her wake and found that mainstream success while still celebrating their Latin roots.
Yeah, I mean, she was really breaking new ground.
She was.
In a lot of ways. And, you know, even after her death, her music continued to connect with all these new audiences.
It did.
The posthumous release of that English language crossover album, Dreaming of You, was a huge success.
It was a phenomenal success. It reached the top of the Billboard 200 chart.
Wow.
And it featured, you know, hit songs like I Could Fall in Love and the title track, Dreaming of You. And it showed that she really was on the verge of becoming a global pop superstar.
And it's kind of bittersweet to think about, you know, all the things that she might have accomplished.
It is.
Had things been different. And the article also mentions the 1997 biopic, Selena, starring Jennifer Lopez.
Oh.
And that really played a big part in keeping her memory alive.
It did. It solidified her iconic status and introduced her story to a wider audience who might not have been familiar with music during her lifetime.
Yeah.
And then more recently in 2021, she received a posthumous Lifetime Achievement Award from the Grammys, which further underscores her lasting impact on music.
Right. I mean, it's pretty clear that her legacy continues to shine very brightly.
It does.
So going back to Yolanda Saldívar,
Okay.
the article, you know, gives us a little bit of information about her life in prison over the past 3 decades.
It does. It mentions that despite her incarceration, she has pursued educational opportunities,
Oh, wow.
earning a paralegal and an associate degree in criminal justice. The report also mentions that she has filed several civil rights complaints alleging mistreatment within the prison system, and has also reportedly assisted other inmates with their legal petitions.
That's interesting.
It kind of paints a picture of someone who, even within the confines of prison, remains engaged with the legal system in some capacity.
And it also talks a little bit about her current status within the facility.
It says that she is being held in protective custody, separate from the general inmate population. And this is due to the high-profile nature of the case and ongoing concerns about her safety within the prison system.
Right.
And the article also reminds us that her appeals against her conviction have all been unsuccessful.
So, to kind of wrap things up here, it seems like this parole denial really does highlight the impact of Selena's death. It still felt very deeply by a lot of people. And it's clear that for the parole board spacey, the severity of the crime and the perceived, risk to public safety, those factors outweigh the fact that she had served the minimum term for parole eligibility.
Exactly. This decision is not just a routine legal procedure. It really reflects a societal response to a very profound loss. And I think by looking at this case and by really examining this event, we gain a deeper understanding of the complexities of fame, the intensity of fan culture, and the lasting consequences of violent acts, particularly when they prematurely end a life that was full of such potential.
And this decision came 30 years after her passing.
Yeah.
And it just makes you think, what does the continued public interest in this case? And the parole board's decision tells about how society remembers its icons and how we deal with loss and betrayal on such a huge scale. It makes you really think about, the weight of a legacy and the long shadow that a tragedy like this can cast
Absolutely.
for years and years to come. So that's something to think about.